We're still waiting for our handheld mic, but I have a few thank yous to say, so I figured I could work on this while we wait for the mic to arrive. First of all, major thank you to Maddie for running these Kohn Lectures all year, for coordinating all of this, putting together all the flyers and all of the awesome talks we've had this year. As Maddie mentioned, I started the Speaking Fellow program in 2013, which is crazy. But we wouldn't be here at all if it weren't for a few very important people that I want to thank. So I have to start off by thanking Deb Brassadil and Stephanie Sidelnik, our amazing directors, who were kind enough to take a chance on a random second-year graduate student with a pretty wild idea. But you always had faith in the center. You always supported me and mentored me and challenged me. And I am the director that I am the professor that I am because of you too. I can't cry yet, okay? Thank you to my colleagues, many of whom are here. You guys made a historian make her feel like you made a historian feel like she belonged in a writing center, and that takes some work. So thank you so much for that. I will greatly miss annoying you all in your offices and keeping you from your grading, but texting exists, so I'll find a way to slow you down one way or another. And a special shout out to one of my favorite colleagues, Laura Whitebell, who's taking over this program next year. I am so excited for the Laura era, and I promise you she's just going to be spectacular. Great, great things are in store. I also see a few of my 105 students I want to shout out for being here years and years later from hometowns and Taylor Swift. We came up with an abbreviation in our class, OYS, which stood for On Your Side. And when we'd give someone critical feedback, we felt kind of awkward about it. So we'd write OYS to let them know we were giving it to them out of love and out of support. And I feel the OYS energy. I'm very grateful that you're here tonight. And yes, woo! And of course, I have to save my biggest thank you to the Speaking Fellows. We have multiple generations of Speaking Fellows in the house tonight. We have Speaking Fellows that drove from DC and New York City and closer. And I'm so grateful to have them all here. And as I myself am feeling these nerves, I look out at all of these encouraging faces, and I can't believe how much that they've grown and how lucky we are to still be in each other's lives. So I just want to thank you all for the work that you put into building this center. I didn't build this, you did. And I'm just so grateful that I got to be here for all of it. Thank you for setting an outrageous standard for this program and exceeding it every year. And to our fellows in training, who are also here, welcome to the family. And I'm gonna get started without a mic and hope that it joins us at some point, but I'm also a pretty loud projector, so I think we should be all right. I don't think anyone was here, but in here was in the class when I knocked my water bottle off onto my laptop, but that was an adventurous day. It was an engineering class, and they had an actual screwdriver with them and helped me take my laptop apart. And I was dressed like a Lego because it was Halloween. Let's get started. Make sure my camera's rolling. Yes. I have won thousands of arguments in the shower. I am virtually undefeated in the arguments I have staged on my own, in my own mind. Sometimes they are critical debates before presidential elections. Other times I am winning arguments against friends, family members, students, or anonymous internet trolls. But regardless of the situation, I am articulate. I am courageous. I am poised. I think of everything I need to say exactly when I need to say it, when I am alone. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. How many of you have staged an argument with an invisible opponent? How many of you have perfectly expressed an idea that matters so much to you only when no one else is around? It's so easy to raise our voices when there are no ears to hear them. As soon as there are other humans around to talk to, this all gets so much harder. Suddenly, those perfect words that we came up with and practiced slip from our grasp. That courage, that energy, that poise, they evaporate. This is when the stakes are raised, right? This is when someone can disagree with you or turn against you for your ideas. This is when our voices can have a cost. But silence, too, has a cost. It's no secret that we're living in perilous times. Our country has never been so divided, and not just between left and right, but between old and young, insider and outsider, hopeful and nihilistic. This creates even more pressure on us to keep ourselves quiet and make ourselves small. How do we respond to these moments? How do we summon the courage and the words to meet these moments? How do we learn to use our voices when they are most needed and when we are the most afraid to let them loose? In my 20 plus years of public speaking and my 38 years of being a generally opinionated loudmouth, I've learned one thing for sure. If we wait to start speaking until the moment our voices are needed, they will be difficult, if not impossible, to activate. To meet these moments, we have to prepare for them ahead of time. Not by writing and memorizing scripts, but by creating a well of inspiration, ideas, purpose, and instincts that we can use to guide us when we most need to use our voice. Courage, in other words, can be cultivated. Tonight, I hope to walk you through 4 steps that you can take to cultivate your speaking courage. We'll talk about gathering inspiration from likely and unlikely sources, figuring out what you stand for, determining your purpose, and learning to trust your instincts. If you take one thing away tonight, let it be this. Everything that you need to remake the world is already inside of you, and your voice is the way you let it out. Step 1, gather inspiration. Speaking up is always hard and always requires risk. But we can feel braver doing so if we turn to models of people who have done hard things, faced scary things, and achieved amazing things. When I need inspiration, I turn to Virginia Hall. Anyone heard of Virginia Hall? She's one of my favorite historical figures. Virginia Hall was an American woman who worked as a spy in France during World War II. She became a chief leader of the French resistance, nucleus of probably the biggest spy network in Europe, and was the inspiration for Kristen Hanna's recent novel, The Nightingale, if you read that. What makes Hall's story, the real Hall, all the more remarkable is that she did all of this with a prosthetic leg. She had a hunting accident when she was younger and lost one of her legs from the knee down. And she had a prosthetic, which in the 1940s weighed 8 pounds. This means that if she was caught, she knew she could not physically run away. Despite that challenge, she's conveying countless messages. She worked as a radio operator, which was the most dangerous job a spy could do. She stayed awake for days on end to handle supply drops. She once broke 12 Allied prisoners out of a German POW camp, and when the Gestapo was finally closing in on her, she escaped to neutral Spain by crossing the Pyrenees on foot. Right? If Virginia Hall can do all of that, I can find the courage to tell you how I feel about cancel culture, right? It suddenly just doesn't feel quite as daunting. And there are so many historical figures that you can turn to for inspiration, many of whom used their voices to make a difference. Some of my favorites include Sojourner Truth, a local, Frederick Douglass, Alice Paul, my personal favorite suffragette, Abraham Lincoln, civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., but also Anne Moody and Fannie Lou Hamer. Courageous Americans who risked everything and used their voices to fight for what they believed in. Read about them. And not just the great stuff they did, read about the hardships they faced. Remind yourself that everyone faces challenges. Everyone has days when they'd rather be silent. Everyone wants to throw in the towel. Everyone faces despair. They did, and they came through it, and you can too. You can also turn to literary characters for inspiration. Maybe it's the principles of Atticus Finch that call to you, or the courage of Bilbo Baggins. It could be a character from your childhood, like Matilda Wormwood or the Pevensey siblings. For me, and some of you are going to know this, it is Violet Sorrengail from Fourth Wing, and I am not even a little bit sorry about it. These books have me convinced that I could legitimately ride a dragon. So yeah, speaking up just doesn't seem quite as hard. Throughout history, many of our greatest speakers have turned to literature, not just for inspiration, but also for words. Consider Patrick Henry, who declared, "Give me liberty or give me death," or Nathan Hale, who announced, "I only regret that I have but one life to give for my country." Two of the most revered quotes of the American Revolution, from all of American history, really. We dream of being as brave as these guys, able to come up with these bold one-liners right on the spot as we're facing danger. Nathan Hale literally saying this as his last sentence before he is hanged as a patriot spy. Except that they didn't come up with these phrases on the spot. They were actually inspired by a very popular play of the time, bringing the dissertation into it, you see, called Cato. Cato was a play set in ancient Rome, and it focused on resistance to the tyranny of Julius Caesar. It was a play that focused on rebelling against tyrants. So you can understand why the patriot soldiers of the Revolutionary War loved this play. It was frequently performed at Valley Forge. Even when theater was banned, this play was performed, and it was a personal favorite of George Washington. Ooh, I can stop shouting. Awesome. Personal favorite of George Washington. And you can compare the lines, it is now time to talk of aught but chains or conquest, liberty or death. Give me liberty or give me death. What a pity it is that we can die but once to serve our country. And I point this out not to call our forefathers plagiarists, because they weren't. They were tapping into a shared cultural context that their audience would have been familiar with. In quoting or paraphrasing this play, they were saying, "Give me liberty or give me death," but they were also saying, "I am resisting tyranny." Like the characters you love and respect, I am resisting tyranny. So often we fall for this myth that we are alone, that our voices are just a blip, incapable of bringing about any kind of real change. But the truth, which Henry and Hale both knew, is that we join a legacy of brave people who found the courage to speak up even when it was scary. Turn to this lineage for inspiration, but remember that you're not separate from it. You are part of this history. Step 2, figure out what you stand for. If you're going to speak up, you got to have something to say. But I'm not just talking about generating content here. I'm talking about putting in the work so that you don't just feel generically brave, but also prepared. In other words, you'll feel more confident starting to speak if you know that you have something to say, and if you really believe in the words that you're going to say. And some of you might be thinking, "I'm way too young for this. I'm only in college. How am I supposed to know what I stand for?" Most days you probably barely feel like an adult. Some of the adults in the room barely feel like adults. But the truth is, your values are already forming. You are already deciding what is important to you and where your red lines are. So here I'm just encouraging you to start putting this into words and start approaching this with greater intention. One second. Just back to a quick dragon slide. And I want to make two things very clear. One, your ideas and values are allowed to evolve as you grow and learn more information. One of the best parts of being human is that we are always learning. New information, new perspectives, new ideas can and should shape the way you view the world. But also, you are also allowed to hold core values that do not evolve. For me, one of these values is the idea that all humans are human, deserving of equal rights and equal freedoms. And nothing's going to budge that for me. Nothing is going to change. No new information is going to change that view for me. It is the thing I feel to my core. So, like so little in life, you get to have it both ways. You get to hold some values firm, and others are allowed to evolve. Again, we're human. It's messy. And once you have your ideas, you got to start putting them into words. And here, the best tool that you have available to you is writing. My students have heard me say this 1,000 times, but it's my last talk, so I'm going to say it one more time. I firmly believe that writing is the greatest thing humans ever invented. And yes, speaking fellows, you know I'm going to say it, I am including Dairy Queen blizzards in this ranking. This has become a hotly contested issue among the speaking fellows as to which is the greater human invention, writing or Dairy Queen blizzards, but I stand by, Carla knows what I'm talking about, I stand by my contention that the pen is mightier than the blizzard. Write for yourself, journal, write poetry, song lyrics, whatever you can use to help you express yourself. But I urge you to write for others too. This can be through social media posts or blogs. You could use a platform like Substack or Medium or so many others. Maybe it's academic writing that calls to you, so you can pursue the journal route. But whatever you do, write in public. Writing in public is the best way to test your ideas, get feedback on them, and then refine them or change them entirely. And I know it's scary, but I promise it gets less scary the more you do it. And if you want to get better at speaking your ideas out loud, then you have to practice speaking your ideas out loud. I know it's hard. You can start with a friendly audience. Start with people who have the same views that you do and ask them for honest feedback on how you're expressing your ideas. But be careful with these conversations because they can only take you so far. They can quickly become echo chambers that feel great in the moment, I'm not going to lie, but that don't really prepare you for less friendly audiences. Seek disagreement. Start conversations with people who feel differently than you do, or whose ideas and opinions you don't even know yet. And when you start these conversations, remember that it's a dialogue. Keep an open mind and practice active listening. This means setting aside any distractions and giving the speaker your full attention. It means listening to understand, not listening to reply. We all know what listening to reply looks like, and we're all probably guilty of it from time to time. You listen until you find something you can argue with, and then you completely tune out and just focus on crafting your retort, right? And you miss so much of what the other person has to say. We're not going to do that. We're going to listen to understand. Think that tell yourself that someone's going to give you a pop quiz afterwards on what the other person said. Focus on internalizing their ideas, outlining them, seeing how they fit together. Look for places where they differ from yours, but also where they share common ground. And ask yourself honestly if after hearing a different perspective, your own ideas need to shift or evolve. Give yourself permission to say yes. I once saw an email signature that said, I am open to being told I am wrong. And I have tried to live my life with this energy ever since. It is not always easy. But I think this is the right attitude, right? If we can let go of this need to be perfect, if we can start to view disagreement not as failure, but just a part of the general communication process, we give ourselves the freedom to experiment and explore. And this is where the best ideas are often unleashed. I want to acknowledge for my college students here that your generation has grown up with a level of publicity that would have been unthinkable to me as a kid. And I think that it has created extra pressure around the ideas of messing up. When I was in college, if I wrote or said something dumb or embarrassing, the worst thing that could happen to me would be a couple classmates going home and telling their roommates about it. Maybe they laugh about me behind my back. It's mortifying. But for you guys, it could go viral and reach tens of thousands of people with one click from a fellow classmate chasing quick engagement or laughs. I see the weight that you carry with this stuff. I recognize why it's so much harder for your generation to take that risk and use your voices. But I also know that if you want to put your voice to use, you have to be willing to face disagreement, embarrassment, and even being wrong. If we millennials can teach you anything, it's that to be cringe is to be free. And I cannot stress this enough. I mean this with my whole heart. What did you say? I'm saying it with my whole chest. Remind yourself that criticism of your ideas does not equal criticism of you. A lesson I am admittedly still learning. But cultivate the courage to seek disagreement, to engage other perspectives, to own when you're wrong, and to let your ideas evolve and grow. Step 3, determine your goals and style. All right, Amy's talking a lot about speaking up. What does that mean? What does that look like? How is that different for every person? How you speak up will depend on what your goal is, what you're trying to accomplish. And figuring out that goal and what style of speech you need to meet that goal is going to make all of this feel a lot more possible. You're starting to rule out some of the unknowns, and you're starting to be able to visualize what you want to accomplish. Maybe you're someone who likes to debate. Your goal is persuasion, right? You are trying to prove someone else wrong and yourself right. You might even be trying to build consensus and convince a whole group of people to believe what you believe. If this is your goal, you're going to spend a lot of time on research. You need to find compelling evidence. You need to prepare for counter arguments. You have to decide where you are willing to compromise and where you're not. I have to be honest, I have always struggled with this kind of communication, my winning streak of shower arguments aside. I've never been very good at debate or persuasion. I still have a memory of being a teenage camp counselor and trying to persuade a 7-year-old not to be afraid of the thunderstorm raging outside. But instead, at the end of that conversation, she had given me a lifelong fear of thunderstorms, which persists to this day. She made some very compelling points. But I struggle with debate. It's not my strong suit. My style tends to focus more on opening minds to new perspectives. I like to ask questions. I like to poke holes. I like to prod. I like to complicate. Yeah, I know, it's a pain in the butt, isn't it? There's a reason I ended up in academia. I love to reshape my ideas while watching others reshape theirs as if we're verbally playing with Play-Doh together. And so I have to do a lot of research too. But I'm focused less on finding evidence for a claim and more on finding different possibilities to include, different perspectives to incorporate. And there's so many other goals too. Maybe you're a problem solver. Your goal is to respond to something going on and to think through how all of the components of that problem could be fixed. Maybe you like proving, logic, reasonable conclusions. You're a modus ponens person. Look at that math reference. Your goal might be to humanize someone or to call attention to something that you care deeply about. And as you could probably guess, these goals share some overlap, and there's so many more that we could list. But I hope that this variety shows you there's no one way to do this. There's no right or wrong goal when it comes to speaking up. You just have to know what your goal is. And most of the time, your goal will also be dependent on the audience, the situation, and your attachment to the information. I just got done telling you guys that I'm terrible at persuasion, but a few years ago, I had to employ it. My family has a cabin in the Allegheny National Forest in a small town called Marionville, Pennsylvania, and it is my favorite place on earth. My grandparents' generation built it by hand, and it's very crooked. You can tell it was built by hand, and I'm now the third generation to own it. A few years ago, the Forest Service let us know they were planning to construct an ATV trail that would go directly through our backyard. I know. We lease the land from the Forest Service, though. We have no legal recourse. It's their land. So Amy took a deep breath, put on her persuasion hat. I called up the person in charge and set up some conversations, and I wrote a very long, detailed letter. I think Deb actually helped me with it and got a few cabin owners to sign onto it. Importantly, I started with compromise. ATV tourism is a huge part of the local economy. And I knew if I started my letter, started my conversation with, "You cannot build this trail," that we'd go no further than that. They were not interested in hearing that. That was a non-starter. So instead, I used my knowledge of the terrain, my dad's experience, the experience of other people, to advocate for a different location for the trail. I wrote my best persuasive letter. I marshaled my evidence. I laid out testimony the best case I could, and it worked. The trail is now under construction far from our backyard. This communication worked, and I found the courage to do it because I understood my goal. I knew what I wanted to accomplish, and I knew what kind of style, even if it was uncomfortable to me, I needed to use. And knowing that helped me approach this much more like I could see it in front of me. It was on paper. So know what your goal is, and that will naturally help you build your courage. And our last step, empower your inner voice and hydrate. So now you have it. You have your inspiration. You have your ideas that you've turned into words. You know your goal and the style of speech you should use. You're ready to start speaking, right? Except that this is often the hardest part. How to go from not speaking to speaking. When I was in college, I worked at another summer camp in Princeton, New Jersey. And one of my duties at this summer camp was to bring campers to religious services if they chose to attend while at camp. And sometimes I waited in the car for them, but one summer I had a camper who wanted to attend Quaker meeting at this incredible Quaker meeting house in Princeton, New Jersey that predates the Revolutionary War. And I'll admit that I was curious. I mean, I like old stuff. I wanted to see inside that building. But also, I had heard good things about the Quakers. They stand for peace, and their services sounded interesting. They were open to everyone, so I decided to attend. Has anyone here ever been to a Quaker meeting? A couple, yeah. If you've never been, it is very hard to describe. Everyone sits in one room. In this meeting house, everyone faced this empty central area, and you sit in silence for an hour. There are no readings, no songs, no prayers, no sermon, nothing. You just sit in silence for an hour, unless the Spirit of God moves someone to speak, in which case they stand up, share what the Spirit has moved them to say, and then they all return to silence. In the 3 times that I attended Quaker meeting, one person spoke for about 2 minutes, and I was told that was a very auspicious occasion that I got to see someone speak. The rest of the time was just silence. And I quickly learned that your girl is not a Quaker. Shutting up for a full hour is physically painful for me, as I'm sure actually everyone in this room knows about me. I struggle with meditation and turning off my noisy brain, so I didn't find this reflective, but I will acknowledge that many people do. And one time, I could swore I heard a cat outside, and all I wanted to do was go find it. But this experience stayed with me, and I became fascinated with the concept of that inner voice that the Quakers thought of as the voice of God. And I talked with many of them about it after the service when we could talk to each other. And you know, for me, I'm not a Quaker, and I don't know if for me this is the voice of God, but I did know the voice they were talking about. I was familiar with the sensation that they described, and I'm guessing that many of you are too. For me, this voice lives square in the center of my chest. And when it activates, it can feel like a fist clenching and drawing me inward. This is the voice that activates when I have to speak. It does not offer you a choice. It does not gently say, I think you have something valuable to contribute here. No, this is the voice that says, you're talking now. 3, 2, 1, go. It's the voice that pushes you out of the plane. Has anyone ever felt that voice that just compels them to speak? Maybe it's happened in class when you have an idea or a question that you just absolutely have to share. Or you're in a conversation or a debate and there's just a point that you absolutely have to raise, even if you interrupt someone to do it. This is the voice that activates when you can no longer physically be silent. And I want to be clear that this voice is uncomfortable. This is much more than butterflies. This is intense and overwhelming. But how incredible that to an entire religion, this is the voice of their God. Tens of thousands of people consider this voice to be holy. That's how powerful it is. And I have come to realize that this inner voice is probably the most powerful asset we have as a speaker. This is our activation energy that moves us from fear to courage, from silence to speech, but only if we get to know it. We have to listen to this voice. We have to think of it not just as this overwhelming external thing, but as part of us, as a piece of us that is fundamentally on our sides. We have to reshape our relationship with it and build trust in it. So as I started to do this, I started to recognize that this voice sent me other messages as well. Sometimes I would be driving and I knew I needed to turn left, but something told me to turn right. Or I'll have a day where I have an absolutely packed to-do list, not a minute to spare, and a new task comes up and I can't explain it, but I just know I have to drop everything and focus on that task. We're talking about instincts, right? Those powerful motivators that communicate things to us that we're not even conscious of, and that can get us to act quickly in moments where, if we slowed down to think about it, we might not act at all. And so tonight, I'm going to give you some unexpected advice. Indulge your impulses. Did I lose my mic? I did. Ah, dang it. Okay. Indulge your impulses. Not all of them, of course, but as many as you safely can. If anyone like me is neurospicy in the room, you might have spent a lot of your life being told to rein in your impulses, to control them, to overcome them, to ignore them. And that advice does have its place. But tonight, we're going to set it aside. Its place is over here. And we are going to let our impulses breathe. Drive a different way home. Drive somewhere else entirely, somewhere new. Eat ice cream for dinner. Call that friend you've been meaning to catch up with. Say the cringy thing. Wear the brightly colored sundress. The more that we indulge our impulses, the more we empower that inner voice. And the more we empower that inner voice, the more it can show up for us when it counts. To the Quakers, this is the voice of God. To me, it's the courage muscle. And like any other muscle, it's something that can be honed and strengthened with time and intention. So what happens when we bring these 4 pieces together? Our inspiration, our words, our goals, and that powerful inner voice. What do these 4 things build? As I was thinking about my title, Cultivating Courage, I couldn't shake the image of gardening. I was thinking about a gardener cultivating a plant. And there's that wonderful moment where something new sprouts from the earth, where something bright and green exists that didn't exist before. And it's magical. But if we look closer and we rewind a bit, we can see all of the intention and work that went into this. The gardener first has to prepare the soil. They lay out the seeds just right, giving each one the space it needs to grow and thrive on its own. Then the seeds have to take over. They need certain nutrients, water, and sunlight. And when that shoot cracks open that seed under the ground, the first thing it does is disrupt. It has to move earth. It must leave behind its outer shell. It needs to stretch itself, to transform, and to ultimately engage with the new world that it is entering. And no plant is alone in the world. It is connected to everything around it. There is weather it must endure, rain that beats it down but ultimately nourishes it, harsh sun that can feel endless but also essential, hard things it must go through to be strengthened and to grow. And there are pollinators it must interact with if it wants to survive. This whole buzzing, chirping, chaotic community that it is now a part of. When you start to speak up, when you find the courage to use your voice, you join an ecosystem of ideas and dialogue. You leave behind the safety of your shower arguments to instead engage with the humans we are so blessed to share this planet with. You disrupt and force the world to reshape around your words. And you introduce something new, something with the potential to fundamentally transform everything that it touches. Courage can be cultivated. And I promise you that your voices can make an impact. Thank you. In true Kohn Lecture fashion, I'll take any questions. That's what the speaking fellows have to do, so I feel like I should do it as well. Anybody have any questions? Katie. Thank you. Katie knows that that's my trick to getting students to talk in class. When I ask a question they won't answer, I sip from my water bottle until they feel intimidated enough to talk. That's why I've stayed so perfectly hydrated all these years. Amaris, I saw your hand. I was waiting. I thought all the speaking fellows would want to ask me that at the same time. How did that feel? That is our magic question in the speaking fellows that we ask everyone after everything that they practice. I feel like I wish I could do it all over again. I feel so supported in this room, and I'm so grateful that I got to share all of that with you. Any other questions? Deb. So in 2013, when you came up with this really cool idea, did you ever imagine that you would be where you are right now? Absolutely not. Deb just asked if I imagined in 2013 that if I could have seen myself here. I was a historian. I didn't think I had any business being in a writing, speaking, and argument program. This was a small stop for me. I thought it'd be something to add to my CV. And then I spent this time here and I really found my voice as a writer and as a teacher and as a speaker. And I joined these incredible, thoughtful, generous colleagues. And it's really just been such a wonderful, beautiful time. So I couldn't have expected it at all. And I'm so grateful that it's just been a wonderful surprise this whole time. Did I see another hand? Oh, yes. Michelia. Do I ever feel nervous? Hell, speaking fellows who were with me the hour before this talk, I couldn't even eat dinner. I was so nervous. Yes, we all feel nervous. And it's the biggest green flag because if you're nervous, it means you're saying something important enough to be nervous about it. It means that you're doing something worth being nervous. And I love what I said to Aurora. Where's Aurora? Before her Kohn lecture last month, she turned to me and said, I'm really, really nervous. I wasn't expecting to feel this way. And I said, how few times in your life do you get to feel this nervous, this rush of adrenaline, this feeling of knowing that you're alive and you're about to share your ideas and connect with all of these people? I do get nervous, but I also get so nerdy about it. I love it. I think it's such an incredible high to experience that. So the nerves are part of the fun for me, I'd say. Any other? Ooh, Willow, like the tree. Advice for people who are starting a new chapter of their life. Oh, that's a good one. I think I would say throw away the idea that you're doing anything alone. And if you think you're doing something alone, find other people, because alone is no way to live. I'm blessed in my endeavor to have my wonderful business partner, former speaking fellow Maria, who's up there cheering me on. And I couldn't do this without her. And beyond that, we're part of networks of people that we've met. So I guess that would be my biggest advice, is to find community. And I would also say, never expect it to turn out like your first plan, because it never does. And if it did, that would be so totally boring, you know? So have a vision, but be prepared for side quests and be prepared for that vision to evolve on its own. Carla. I thank you for asking that, because I wanted to say that in my thank yous and I forgot. Sorry, I have like a little hiccup in my throat. So as Maddie mentioned, my business is called Spark Speak, and I have a monthly newsletter called the Spark Plug. And when I first launched it a few months ago, I posted and said, send me ideas for articles. And my wonderful colleague, Catherine Schaefer, stopped me in the WSAP and said, I have an idea for a Spark Plug. And I was like, awesome, thanks, I need ideas. And she said, I want you to tell us how to find the courage to speak up in these really scary times. I was like, thanks, Catherine. Like, you couldn't have asked me about like how to do good hand gestures. You know what I mean? Like, had to throw something hard at me. But if you know anything about me, it's that I can't rest until I say yes to something. So at first I was like, no, I couldn't do that. And like by the time I walked back to my office, it was like, well, I probably could. That's Deb's voice. I have Deb's voice. I'm like, well, yeah, I could do that. And then I started realizing that that was the question I wanted to ask, and those were the words I wanted to go out on. So Catherine gave me the idea, and it just seemed really fitting for my final words. Kristen. Number one thing I've learned. Well, I've learned a lot of slang words from the youth that I use incorrectly. Did I cook? Woo! I cooked, but I wasn't cooked. I cooked. It's all about the tense. I think the biggest thing I learned was how to step into a leadership role. I had never, ever been any kind of a boss before. And suddenly I had to be a director of a center. And I was lucky I had such wonderful support and models for doing that. But figuring out how to make the hard decisions, how to bring a group together and build community, how to build trust with the people that you're with, and to establish a culture that will continue, it's probably the thing I'm proudest of, and probably the thing that I'm going to take as my greatest part of my experience. Aurora, now the questions are flying. I love it. One thing I hope to see the Speaking Fellows continue doing. I think I said it in class today. I love that we present at this conference, NAC. I think it's really cool for the tutors to get to meet other tutors. But I love the Kohn lectures. I love us speaking in public and bringing the campus community into it, taking what we do out of the tutoring room. But if there's something that I hope to see the Speaking Fellows do in the future, I would say I hope it's something I can't even imagine. I hope it's something that will take me totally by surprise. No pressure, Laura, but like I can't wait to be so surprised and to think to myself, oh, that's perfect. Like, oh, I can't wait to see how that turns out. So I hope it's something I haven't even thought of. Allison.
I think maybe like the first day of Rage 47, we talked about how like you've always been like enjoyed public speaking since like us.
I've always been a yapper. Yep.
So do you think that your courage was like innate to you and who you are as a person, or do you think it was also cultivated?
So Allison asked if my courage was innate to me or if it was always cultivated. Um, it's definitely something I had to cultivate. And I had a weird experience with speaking a lot as a child because I was a yapper. I was always talking, but I also hated attention. So I would talk and talk and talk until everyone looked at me and then I would panic. And as you know, my name's Amy, and it was a family joke to play Amy by Pure Prairie League and watch me just dissolve in tears because I couldn't take any attention on me. I like the song now, don't worry. But I really did. It started when I started to recognize my voice not as an annoying piece of me, but as a talent and a strength and a tool that I could be using. And that's when I started to feel braver about using it and experimenting and taking some risks. And that's when I started to also just find a lot of joy. So I think for me, courage and joy go hand in hand. I think joy is one of the biggest, I should have step 5, build joy. I think joy is one of the greatest instigators of courage. And to me, if you're not enjoying it, I don't really know why you're doing it. Soul. Existential question. Throw it at me, Soul. Sorry, that's all the time we have. No, I'm just kidding.
So this talk is just such a joyous, thought of freshness and hope, and yet we are in such dark times. And part of it is not the darkness that wears me down and other people, but it's the cult-like, impenetrable swaths of people that we cannot dialogue with because they are not interested in dialogue, and they have a cult belief. You have a cult belief that is by definition not for dialogue, and that is very exhausting.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree.
So my question is like, how do you speak up? Never mind courage. Where do you get stamina to engage with something or someone that does not wish to be engaged? Where do you find hope?
I think you have to recognize it's a long game and that you can plant seeds without seeing the results from them for many years, but that they're still worth planting. And so if I'm talking to someone who won't engage with a dialogue with me, okay, but I'm going to sort of say what I think anyway. And it doesn't mean that they're never going to hear it. It's going to earworm into there. You know, I have a very memorable, annoying voice. Like it will stay with them. And you never know when that's going to turn out later in life. But I also think it's important in this moment to look at what we'll just say the name Donald Trump has tapped into. um, he has tapped into this feeling of being left behind. I'm not saying it's a legitimate feeling, but he's tapped into this feeling of being left behind, of being an outsider against this elite class. It's what he's done very successfully. It's what won him 2 terms of the presidency. And I look at this recent engagement he got in with the Pope, and that he was, going toe to toe with the Pope. And all these commentators are saying, "Oh, he's going to lose voters." And I'm like, no, he's not, because this fits his narrative. He is the anti-establishment person, and it doesn't get much more establishment than the Pope. So he might lose a few Catholic voters, but in a larger sense, he is adding to his narrative. And so I think if you want to get to people who believe in something so deeply, you need to look at what they really believe in, what they're really feeling, what the real roots of that narrative are. And that's a narrative, if I can get nerdy for a minute, that stretches back to the literal origins of our country. Bacon's rebellion is fought over this, over white landowners saying, no, 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 it's not us that's the problem, it's those indigenous Americans. It's why poor white men fight for the Confederacy in the Civil War. It's not the white planters that are the problem, it's black people, right? We should keep them enslaved. This has been a through line through American history from the beginning into today. And so if we want to counter it, we have to go to that root. We have to make the case that all people are deserving of rights, all people deserve equal treatment, all people deserve a possibility, a chance, and we just have to stick to that, but help them see that they fit in that too. And I will be honest, I'm not always the most hopeful person. Like, I do have really dark days. My husband has heard many of these rants. There are times where it feels like things are just getting worse and worse and worse. But in those days, I turn to Virginia Hall, you know, living in Nazi occupied France, doing everything she could to like blow up a bridge to stop a train from carrying supplies. And I have to think that things are a little better than they were for her. And she didn't quit, you know? And, look at what happened in Hungary. That's something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. Democracy unseated a dictator. You don't know how rare that is, if that has ever happened before. That's something that a month ago I would have told you was not possible. And it happened because his opponent spent 16 years fighting that fight. It can be easy to check out. It can be easy to say, that's not my problem. I don't want to watch politics. I don't want to engage with this. We're part of it. We're in it. And, it's like the astronaut said, the difference between a team and a crew. Did you see the speech? That with a crew, they thought they understood what it meant till they went to space. And then they found that the difference between a team and a crew is when you're part of a crew, you're really all in one mission together. You're all stuck on one little bubble together. And they looked at Earth and they realized we're a crew. And that's how I've started to view it, that I'm with them. Even when I disagree with them, even when we share nothing in common, we're working towards the same goal and we have to find some way to get there together. And I think that's probably a good place to end it. Thank you all so much for coming. This has meant so much to me, and I think Deb has